Chuck D from the group Public Enemy did not start working with Def Jam Recordings right away when its co-founder, Rick Rubin, first approached him. The story goes that Rick Rubin would continuously be calling Chuck to get him to come make records, and that Chuck initially wasn't fully sold on the idea of still being or becoming a rapper. He felt that he was like 20 or so years old. He felt that he was too old to get into rapping. That he would look at guys like LL Cool J, who were at the time like 16 years old, and absolutely be blowing up everywhere, and that he was just too old, and that he had missed his chance. Eventually, Rick Rubin's persistence got Chuck D to come in with the rest of Public Enemy, and from there, over the years, the world got Yo, Bum Rush the Show, and It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, and just some of the greatest hip-hop music, some of the greatest, flat-out, greatest music ever. When I first started getting into Rick Rubin in the early Def Jam days and like reading up on them and watching YouTube videos on them and all that, I was always into this story, into the story of Chuck D. He went from thinking his chance had passed to becoming one of the greatest MCs of all time. When I really started to properly look back on my university experience and to try and make whatever sense I could of why afterwards it was such a difficult time, of why I became depressed, when I tried to make sense of it, this story of Rick Rubin and Chuck D really ended up being hella helpful in helping me put some things in context. I would look at what I'd read about Chuck D's reasoning for believing that he was too old to get into rap and that his chance had passed, and his reasoning at the end of the day was not really grounded in any like really concrete facts. There was no hard rule that you can't start a rap career at 20 years old. There was no hard rule that because LL was blowing up at 16, that 16 years old was now the standard for when a rap career needs to kick off in order to be successful. And since there were no hard rules, look what happened. At 20 years old, he was still able to start a rap career and blow up with Public Enemy. He was still able to do this even though he wasn't 16 like LL Cool J. The other big thing that stuck out from Chuck D's story was that even though Rick Rubin was constantly calling him and trying to get him to come in to make music, Chuck was reluctant at first, and it ultimately took months before he felt ready to work with Rick and with Def Jam. That's the key thing here. On the one hand, he was ready for success as a rapper in that he was talented and did have an amazing voice, and he did catch the attention of Rick Rubin and Def Jam. On the other hand, he wasn't ready for success. He wasn't ready to dive in for it, so to speak, to dive into it and go for it, so to speak. It's not that he couldn't do it. It's more that it wasn't meant to happen right away when he was first approached to do it. I kid you not, this differentiation between ready versus ready for success explained so much about my struggles after university And again, I kid you not, it was this Chuck D story that really put it in context for me, that really hit the nail on the coffin. As low confident and unsure and self-critical and all these things that I experienced after my undergrad, and in many ways just like any person to an extent still experience here and there, I still deep down, like even in those tough periods, I deep down just knew that I was smart and hardworking and resourceful, and that I did have the capability to be a successful adult, whether from a career perspective, relationship perspective. I just knew that I was capable to achieve success, that I was ready in that sense for success. What I have since learned is that there is a distinct difference between being ready for success in terms of possessing like the prerequisites, so to speak. So like having the degree, the network, the work ethic, the drive, the desire. There is a distinct difference from that with being ready for success, meaning being mentally prepared and mentally in a place where you can put yourself out there and properly go get that success. There is a difference between being ready versus being ready for success. Understanding this difference was such a liberating feeling, and it honestly took so much weight off my shoulders in terms of expectations and pressures and even just like overall stress. While it is true that before, during, and after leaving McGill, I had proven to myself that I was a hard worker, that I was driven, that I was capable, that I possessed both tangible and intangible qualities that would enable me to succeed. While I did possess this after finishing university, mentally, I was nowhere near ready to fully apply these qualities and to start to build a truly successful post-university life. And the fact that, like I said, the fact that I deep down knew that I was capable, yet here I was living a life filled with mental struggles and eventually depression, it resulted in this huge gap between current and ideal self, between real and ideal self, and it just fucked with me so much that I knew that I was capable of getting to here, yet here I was stuck down here. I'm sure that in some ways, being 23 out of 24 videos in, some things are starting to become a little repetitive with what I'm talking about. Like, for example, the thing about the gaps between current and ideal self and the types of expectations that we develop, which in turn shape our ideal selves. But again, I am such a believer that a lot of mental health struggles, including post-university mental health struggles, involve to some capacity the types of gaps that we have between our current situation and the situation that we want. The bigger the gap, the less defined the ideal situation, the less defined the current situation, the tougher it can be for us. To me, the idea of being ready for success versus being ready for success is another example of a gap. The gap is wanting success and being ready for success and attaining success. To close this gap, as I've learned after leaving university, you need to also take into account the mental side of being ready for success. There are all kinds of things that can make you not be ready for success. It could be the type of reasoning that Chuck D had when he thought he was too old, or when he compared himself to a younger LL Cool J. Your equivalent to Chuck D's reasoning could be that you're too old for that kind of job or that kind of relationship, and comparing yourself to someone younger than you who does currently already have these things. Other things that can make you not be ready for success could include certain fears or insecurities that are putting up a personal resistance in you. Taken further, reasons can and do include mental health struggles and mental health illnesses. I hated feeling like a failure after university, and hated that I was not succeeding the way I was succeeding while in school. I hated knowing that I had the ability to succeed, but that I wasn't. I learned that I simply wasn't ready, that I had some other things to work on and work out in order to allow me to get to that place where I could get out there and succeed. And it's funny to look at it now, because what I, to this day, consider my greatest success is the time and effort that I put into my mental health and the numerous walls and personal resistance that has come down. To this day, this is my greatest achievement. For all you guys who are struggling now that you are finished university and who are feeling like impatient and exasperated that things aren't flowing smoothly, it could very well have little to do with your actual capability to succeed. You could very well be ready in that sense. It might, as it did for me, it might have something more to do with the other piece of being ready for success. The mental aspect. The acknowledgement of the fears and the insecurities and the dropping of the resistance aspect. It's not that you aren't ready or might never be ready for success. No. It's that you just might not be ready yet. On that note, one of the best lines that I've ever heard that I feel just so well describes mental health struggles and this whole idea of the mental component of being ready to strive for success is Lord's line in her song, Still Sane. I'm not in the swing of things, but what I really mean is not in the swing of things yet. That is the powerful distinction that made such a difference in my struggles with mental health and with depression.